All right, I think we should get started. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Chris Wong, Head of Developer Relations here at Mapbox. Patrick, can you hit next slide? And before we get started, a few logistical notes. So this session is getting started with the Maps SDK for Flutter. As usual, all build sessions will be recorded, so you can watch them in the Zoom platform after this meeting is over, or after the session is over, and then after a week or so, we'll put them all up on YouTube, so you can check them out at your leisure later. Captions are available, so click on the little Show Captions link in your Zoom interface, and you can choose a language to see captions. You can submit your questions through the Zoom Q&A feature. So if you're already in the chat, that's great, but there's the Q&A feature where you can actually write down your question in a more structured way. We can answer them in a more structured way. So be sure to ask them there because otherwise we tend to lose track of them sometimes. And we'll get to that at the end. So we'll have a question and answer period. And lastly, you can discover all the build sessions available through the week in our Zoom event lobby, or just go to mapbox.com/build. Look forward to seeing you in lots of sessions. We've got lots of great developer-focused content this week. All right, without further ado, I will turn it over to Patrick Leonard, who is a senior software engineer on the Maps SDK team. And he's going to show us all about how to get started with the Maps SDK for Flutter. Take it away, Patrick.
Great. Thank you, Chris, and welcome all to getting started with Maps SDK for Flutter. As Chris mentioned, I'm a senior software engineer on the Maps SDK team. I've been on this team I've been at Mapbox for about 6 years, and I'm on this team for 3, working on our Maps SDK team, which builds our iOS, Android, and Flutter SDKs. And I work across all 3, but today we'll be focusing on getting started with the Flutter SDK. So just a quick little agenda. So I'll give a quick overview of the SDK itself and some requirements there, and then we'll dive right into a code along session for getting started with the SDK. So we'll learn how to add the Maps SDK for Flutter to your application. We'll do a quick little hello map just to make sure everything's running correctly. We will learn to configure some parts of the default Mapbox standard style. Then we will add an interaction to the map, add your own data to the map, and then finally show the user's location on the map. So this will just be a preview of some of the capabilities of the Flutter SDK. So there's lots more to do with the Flutter SDK. And if you're interested in learning more, we have a Q&A session at the end. We can point you to specific resources. But for more general questions, we definitely recommend checking out our documentation and our examples, and then also the API reference, all available on our website. So that's docs.mapbox.com/flutter, and then guides, examples, and API reference for whatever you're looking for. So the Mapbox Maps SDK for Flutter has all the advantages that you're used to working in Flutter. So you have one code base, and then you can deploy your application on iOS and Android. So in our case, the Flutter SDK is built on top of our iOS and Android SDKs. So it's the same kind of core Mapbox renderer that's available in those SDKs. And then the Flutter layer is built on top. And so it allows you to access any of the map methods that you're used to if you've worked on iOS and Android. And since we have kind of one common renderer Mapbox, if you're coming from a web background, you'll also have the same methods available when working with Flutter. So I've listed the minimum requirements here. They're also available on our website, but just for reference, I've included them here. The latest version we've released is v2.10.0. We release a new minor version every 6 weeks. At the same time, we release the minor version for iOS and Android. So it's on the same kind of release schedule as Mapbox SDKs you're used to. The code is publicly available. So it's right on our GitHub page. So if you go github.com/Mapbox and then Mapbox Maps Flutter, you'll see everything we use to build the SDK. So if you're really interested in getting involved and seeing kind of what's happening under the hood, you're definitely welcome to review the code. And also PRs are welcome if there's a particular feature you want to work on, or if you see a documentation error or some sort of issue, we would love to work with you there. Cool. All right, just a few prerequisites before we dive into the code along session. So you will need a text editor of some kind. I'll be using VS Code on my side, but any text editor will work fine. You'll also need Flutter installed on your computer. So if you haven't done that already, please follow this link. So it's docs.flutter.dev. Get started, install. It's a pretty quick installation process. So if you start now, you'll be able to catch up with us as we go. Additionally, you'll need a Mapbox access token. And that's just in order to access Mapbox resources. So the map tiles you see there. And you can get that in your Mapbox account at console.mapbox.com. Finally, there's one very specific piece needed for this application, and that is a GeoJSON file of the Rio de Janeiro Marathon route. So it's available in this GIST, and then also this QR code if that's easier for you. And I will also just drop it in the chat here, just so that we're ready to go. All right, I'll drop it in a second as we get clear. And then one final prerequisite is you will need Xcode Simulator or Android emulator in order to run the application. You can use either. I'll be working with an iOS emulator, but it will run the exact same in an Android emulator. So feel free to use whatever you'd prefer for today. Great. Let's get started. So I will switch away from this slide share. And I'm just going to start with a fresh Flutter project in VS Code. So start with, you'll just kind of open your command palette. So on Mac, that'd be Command Shift P. And then you're going to do Flutter New Project. And then when you select, just go with the application, and that'll provide some boilerplate information, and that'll be useful as we go forward. So I'm just putting it in the build folder, but you can put it wherever is convenient on your computer there. For name, I'm going to go with Mapbox build Flutter getting started. Cool. All right. So as I mentioned, because we started with that kind of Flutter application template, you'll see a bunch of files already preloaded. And the one that we're going to start with first is the main.dart file, just here. And this is where we will be doing most of our work. Just to make sure that everything's kind of running okay, I would recommend just running just the boilerplate here. So go down and switch to whatever simulator or emulator you want to use, and then go ahead and run that kind of sample application just to make sure everything's working fine on your side. It'll take just a few seconds to load. It'll be a little faster next time. And this is just like, oh, here it goes. So as you can see, it's just a little sample, and then you can push this button and the number increases. Great. So the first thing we're going to do is add the Mapbox Maps SDK dependency to your application. So in the folders, the file viewer, you want to go into the pubspec.yaml file. And then under dependencies, you'll see Flutter, which you'll want to include. And then also we're going to add Mapbox _ maps _ Flutter. And then we will include the most recent version here. So that's 2.10.0. It may autofill on your side as well. And that allows you to use anything greater than that. So we use semantic versioning. So if we release 2.11.0, then that'll also qualify here. Great. And then real quick, so for iOS, so our minimum supported version is iOS 14, whereas the Flutter default is 12. So we're just going to quickly go through and update all of those iOS minimum versions from 12 to 14. So I would recommend doing a Command Shift F or a search all for 12.0. And then we're going to update these strings to 14. And then just make sure to save the file after. You can also do this in Xcode if you're more comfortable there. But this is a little bit faster for demonstration. Great. Cool. All right. And then we'll go ahead and close the demo application. And then in order to run any application that uses the Mapbox SDK, I mentioned you need a Mapbox access token. So we're going to build a launch file that populates that access token at runtime for your application. So in the folder menu, you right click and then hit new file. And then you want to do period VS Code launch.json. If you are not using VS Code, then you can run this from the command line as well. So we have instructions in our main documentation for Flutter on our website. So if you are not using VS Code, feel free to follow those and you'll get to the same result there. And then if you're using VS Code in your launch.json, we're going to add a configuration. So open bracket configurations. And then another open bracket. Got a little ahead of me. We're going to, for name, going to use Flutter, but you can use whatever you'd like. The request will be to launch or at launch. The type is Dart. And then the program will be that same lib.main.dart. Oh, maybe lib. And then the main piece of information here is the argument we're going to pass with that launch. So just for your args here, you're going to add one for Dart define. And then it'll be access token. Equal sign. And then I'm going to copy my access token, but you should insert your own here. So it's just right there. And that's a comment. So I'll leave this on the screen just for a second so you can catch up. But basically what this configuration is doing is creating like a launch profile so we can quickly within VS Code launch the Flutter application we're building with that Mapbox access token passed in already so that when our application is running, we can access that access token and we'll make those requests to the Mapbox backend to pull in those tiles from Mapbox. Great.
Patrick, I think you
Yep.
might have misplaced a dot and a slash on line 7.
On line 7. Ah, yes, I did. Thank you. Eagle eyes. libmain.dart. Cool. All right, and then let's jump back to our main.dart here. We're going to go ahead and delete everything except the first line. Great. And we'll start with importing the Mapbox SDK directly into this file. So there'll be import package And then it should auto-fill for you. So you're looking for Mapbox Maps Flutter / Mapbox Maps Flutter.dart. And then we're going to start by defining the main method. So there'd be void main run app. We'll call it my app. And then this is where we're going to pull in that token that we just made available to the application. So I'm going to define a string called access token. And then we're going to get this string from the environment. We're going to look for the uppercase access token here. And then we're going to use the Mapbox options to set that as our access token. Great. And one fewer C there. Cool. Now in your My App class, we're going to extend stateless widget. This is just for demonstration purposes, so you can use kind of whatever widget infrastructure you have. Welcome to use, but I'm just going to put everything in kind of one place for convenience here. And our examples app on our website shows a couple different structures for working with Flutter. So if your application looks different from this, I would recommend checking out the examples to see different ways you can pull in the SDK. Widget here. And we're going to return our material app. And I understand this is a lot of boilerplate, so I will slow down in a second. So don't worry too much about keeping up for right now. There'll be plenty of time. So we'll have builder here. Context will pass through. Great. And then here's the key Mapbox part. So it'll be your map widget, which we will fill a little bit later, but for now, we will leave empty. And then let's see. Cool. And so just now that we added the kind of launch feature, you should be able to go into this run and debug portion of VS Code and run the application. And then just real quickly, while we're waiting for that to load, so as you can see, we start with importing the package into this file. And then in the main portion of this file, we pull in that access token that we created before and set it for your Mapbox application. And then lower down here where it says body map widget, that's where we are adding the actual map widget, which is the main entry point for your map in your application. So wherever you want to be adding that map is you put the map widget. And seeing straight a little time, I see a question from Winston here. Is there any gotcha when enabling Mapbox and Flutter to run on both Android and iOS? No, so it runs equally on both platforms as assigned. So it has the same SDKs running underneath it. And so it will work on both Android and iOS there. Great. So now if everything was successful, you should see a globe appearing here. It should be centered kind of around Morocco, and you should be able to interact with it. Zoom in by clicking. If you use Control, you can pan around and swirl it. Cool. All right. So now we have kind of the basic map, the hello map, if you will. And we will start by first adjusting the camera. So as you saw when the map loads initially, it has a default camera where it's zoomed out and you can see the whole globe. So we're going to change that by creating a camera centered on Rio de Janeiro. And then we'll pass that to the map widget where so that when the map widget is initialized, the camera is set there. And so first in here, just under, actually, I think you can put it here in the build. So the camera options, and then you're going to create a camera. And then you can create camera options like this. And so as you can see, there are a couple different options. So there's center, padding, anchor. For now, we're just going to set a center. So that center will be points. The coordinates is position. So the longitude first here, so it'll be negative 43.18326. And then the latitude will be negative 22.9796. After the center, we're going to add a zoom. So we're going to set that at zoom 14. And then we're going to set a bearing. We're going to do negative 161.81. And then the pitch is 70. Cool. And then for convenience, I'm going to just copy those into the chat. It's there. They can be long numbers. Great. What am I missing here? There we go. And then we'll add that to the map widget. So it'll be camera options, and then we'll add the camera here. And then if we rerun our application, you can see we're now zoomed in quite close to Rio de Janeiro, and we've shifted the bearing and the pitch. So we have like a nice kind of horizontal view over the city. Cool. All right, next we're gonna work through adding or setting a few different configuration options on the Mapbox standard style. So Mapbox standard is a newer style we've created that allows you to set certain configuration options at runtime. So there are a number of them available, but we're going to start with just two. So we're going to change the light preset and then also enable landmark icons. But before we do that, we're going to listen to a few different map events. So one is the map loading, and then one is the style loading. And these map events are helpful to be able to know that the map is loaded or the style is loaded and is ready for interaction either from the user or from additional code. So we'll start with creating these two listener functions that will listen for those events, and then we'll also create methods that run when those events are triggered. So we'll code first, and then I'll walk through both of those again. So the first one we're going to do is an on-map created method. So here in your map widget, again, just under your camera options, you want to add a a listener for this. So it'll be on map created, and you'll see it should probably fill in for you. And you can name the method that'll run for this listener whatever you want. We're going to name it underscore on map created. And then we will add it up here. So it's going to be on map created. And that will take the Mapbox map. And we'll call that Mapbox map underscore. And it'll be async. And then we're going to set this .mapbox map to that Mapbox map. Before we do that, we're going to define that within our app as a late initializing Mapbox map. All right. Cool. And so with this Mapbox map here, this one that's late initializing, is the one we're going to interact with in the rest of our code. And so what we've done here is when the map widget creates the map and we receive that event, the map has been created, this onMap created runs and assigns that Mapbox map to this Mapbox map. And so then we know it's safe to interact with, and we can do a series of other methods that are available through Mapbox map on it. Now we're going to do the same thing for the style loaded event. And so that will be triggered whenever a Mapbox style is loaded. So in this case, it'll be the Mapbox standard style that's loaded right at runtime. So it'll happen pretty quickly after the map created event runs. So just under on map created, we'll go with on style loaded listener. I'm going to take a primitive data. And then on style loaded. And then we want the context we're going to pass through, which we will use in a few minutes, and then also the style loaded data here. And then we're going to define this method just underneath the onMap created. So on style loaded. Take that build context, this context, and then also the style loaded event data. And again, this async. Define it here. Great. Okay, and now we can get to setting the import configurations on the Mapbox standard style. So we're going to set two of them. One will change the light preset. So that's kind of like the overall color feeling of the lighting on the map. And we're going to set that to night just initially. And then we're also going to enable showing landmark icons. So for this, we're going to use our Mapbox map that we built earlier. And then the style in that. And then set style import config property. The import ID you want to use here is basemap, which refers to the standard style in this case. So here, basemap. And then the config we want to change is light preset. And we're going to set that just for now to night. And then we're going to do the same thing for another style import config property. It'll be basemap. This config will be show landmark icons. And then we're going to set that to true. So that one takes a bullet. All right, and then we're going to close our app and restart it. And now when the map loads and the style finishes loading, these two import configuration properties will be set differently. So you'll see in a second, the light will be a much darker color to start with, showing a kind of a night or dark mode approach. and then landmark icons will be enabled as well. And so, yeah, so here you see we're in night mode, so the colors are a lot darker. And then also we have these landmark icons for various landmarks in the Rio de Janeiro area. Cool. All right. I think for the purposes of demonstration, we're going to switch to dawn as a different preset. So there's dawn, day, dusk, and night. So you can play with different ones on your end, but I'm going to go with dawn after this as well. And let's see what that looks like. So it'll be a little bit lighter. So day is the default. So that's what we saw when we loaded initially, and we just saw night. This will be done. And then with the landmark icons, we're going to add an interaction. And so interaction is an approach you define that will trigger when the user interacts with a certain feature set in the Mapbox standard style. So we offer a couple different feature sets by default. So there's the landmark icons, there's the 3D buildings, which you can see if you zoom in here, right there. We have one for place labels and then one for POIs, which you can also see here. And what you do is we are going to define what will happen if a user interacts with that option. So in this case, we'll do when a user taps on a landmark icon, a certain set of events will trigger. So we're going to both fly to the location of that icon and then also print a little toast message with the name of that icon. Cool. So just in your style loaded method, but just below where you set the style import config property, we're going to start by defining that tap interaction. So create a new variable, landmark icon tap interaction. And then we're going to define this as a tap interaction. And we're going to define this using a feature set descriptor. So this is how the map kind of knows which of the feature sets you're trying to interact with. So we will set a feature set ID of landmark icons. And then we will set the import ID as base map. As you can see here, so you can also set these on individual layers if you're familiar with Mapbox layers, and you can have kind of similar interaction effects as well. For now, do that, and then import ID. And then we're going to make available in the callback. So we're going to do the landmark icon itself. And then the tap context, which we will use to get the location. I'm going to open that up. Okay, cool. So within this, we're going to define two different variables. So one is going to be the actual point that was tapped. So we're going to name this one the landmark location. And we're going to read from the tap context the point that was tapped. So we just see tap context, that point. And then the next variable we're going to define is the name of the landmark. So for that, we're going to name it the variable landmark name. And we're going to read from the landmark icon properties. Just a string here. So we're going to read the name in English. There's also in here, it would be the Portuguese name, but there are other different properties. And so you can read depending on your needs from that feature set. And just in case that particular landmark icon does not have a name for whatever reason, we're just going to set a backup option of unknown. Cool. All right. And then with these, we're going to do two different things. So the first task we're going to do is fly to the location of that landmark icon. So we're going to use the fly to method. So Mapbox Map.flyTo. And for that, we're going to define a different camera option. So the camera options, and we're just going to use the center at this time. And we're going to set that center to the landmark location that we just defined. And then we're going to set an animation option to determine the duration of that animation. So duration we'll use is 2000 milliseconds. So pretty quick. Cool. And then we're also going to create a little toast message that shows up with the name of the landmark icon. So scaffold, messenger, and then we're going to pull in context here. And then show snack bar. And snack bar. For the content, we're going to just create a string. So text, flying to $ landmark name. And this is scaffold messenger, not scattled. Just close that up appropriately. Great. And then the last thing we're going to do here is add that to the map. Yeah, okay, so it'll be Mapbox Map dot add interaction. And we're going to add the landmark tap interaction. All right, so then I will run this and then walk through it again. What did I do here? I forgot one. Let's see. I think it's there. Oh, I see. This should be up here. Where am I missing one? Open color. Let's see. There we go. All right. Now it should run. Cool. So within our siloed callback here, we will define this landmark tap interaction. The tap interaction will be targeting the landmark icons feature set, which is in the base map ID import. So you need the import ID of base map. When the user taps on that feature set, it will trigger this callback here, so it'll be landmark icon in tap context, a return there. We'll read them into landmark location and landmark name, and then we'll do the fly to, and then point the little snack bar. So for example, if we tap the Museum of Tomorrow, we get this little snack bar that says flying to Museum of Tomorrow. And then we also recenter the map on that particular landmark icon. So you can do kind of whatever you want within this tap interaction. So for example, you may want to add this landmark icon to a favorites menu, or you may want to add it to some sort of like call out option, or maybe have the user go to a different screen if they click it. But whatever you do, it's like define, you are given the ability to define whatever kind of you want to occur when that tap interaction does occur. Cool. All right. Next step we're going to do is we're going to display our own data. So we're going to add a little marathon route of Rio de Janeiro. So that was in the gist that I shared earlier. So we will be using that in the next step. So the first thing we want to do is kind of bundle that with our application. So go back to your folders here and then create a new file. And we're going to put this in an assets folder. So assets.rio marathon.geojson. And then if you look at the gist, you just want to paste the kind of the raw version of it. So this full GeoJSON, so you can just copy the whole thing and then paste it there. And then if you go back to your pubspec.yaml, we're going to actually bundle that particular file. So under assets here, so we're going to name this as assets. And tab, dash, and then just use the location used. So we used assets / Rio Marathon, but make sure to update that for whatever name you used. Cool. And then when we rebuild the application, that file will be bundled with it and available on iOS and Android. Great. Okay, so now back in your main.dart, so still in your style loaded, you're going to read that GeoJSON, and so that we can make it available at runtime. So I'm going to define a new variable, marathon data, and then going to use root bundle to load that string. And then it's again going to use assets _Rio_marathon .geojson. We're going to get a warning since we haven't imported these yet, but you can use quick fix to import package Flutter services Dart, and you'll see that will have popped in right up here. Great. Now with that data, we're going to do two things. So first, we're going to add the data as a source to the map, and then we're going to add a layer which uses that source data to style the line. So first, we're going to do await Mapbox Map .style, add the source, and we're going to use a GeoJSON source since this is a GeoJSON. The ID we're going to use is just Rio Marathon source, but again, you can use whatever you want. And the data is marathon. Oh, I misspelled it up here. Marathon data, marathon date. And then immediately after adding the source, we're going to add a layer which uses that source. So Mapbox Map .style .add layer. And we're going to use a line layer for this source. The ID is going to be Rio Marathon. And the source ID is we're just going to make sure to match what we used before. So Rio Marathon source. Great. All right. And let's rebuild the application. We should see the Rio Marathon, which runs beautifully along the coast in Rio there. It'll show up just as a kind of simple black line, and we'll style that in the next step. I'll just give it a second to load here. Great. And so you can see it's a little faint, but so there's these double black line that kind of snakes around the coast of the city here. But as you can tell, it's a little bit hard to see. So let's go ahead and add some color and to that and a little bit more width. So just after your source ID, we're going to set the line color. So we're going to set that as colors.red. And then we're going to do an int. And then we're going to use a line width of 6. And then just reload that.
Patrick, unfortunately, I think pushing up on time.
Oh, no. Okay, yes.
Yeah, we probably need to cut it there, but I guess once this renders, we can kind of see the styling. But if there's any final thoughts, maybe we can you can close.
No, so I think, yeah, so you can see the styling here, this red line. The last step was adding the user's location, but that is pretty straightforward, and we have some great documentation on our website. So for that last step, it's just docs.mapbox.com/Flutter, and then the user location section will walk you through all that step, all the steps necessary to do that.
Great. There was one question that I would love to see if we can get answered about
Yeah.
offline. So I saw on the list that offline is supported, but is there anything you can add about anything special someone would need to do to use offline?
Let's see. So nothing specific. So it uses the offline approach from our iOS and Android application. So if you're familiar with those, it'll work the same way. But there's nothing in particular you need to be worried about that will be different from them. It'll store the Mapbox tiles for that kind of whatever pack you define in that area and have downloaded to the device. In addition to kind of the main offline pack solution, we also have caching on device. So if you are, if your user pans around a map and downloads a bunch of tiles and then goes offline, they will still have those available for some time. So it's kind of like a little bit of a light offline solution, but the main one, you'll need to pre-download a pack of tiles for a region. And we have both examples and a documentation on our website. So I would recommend just following along there just to make sure you don't miss any specific step, but it's all laid out pretty well there.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much, Patrick, for this wonderful tour of getting started with the Mapbox Maps SDK for Flutter. And to everyone who joined, thank you for your participation and attention. Hopefully this helps you with your Flutter build, and look forward to seeing what you build with Mapbox. Thanks for joining. Take care.
Cool. Thanks all.